This is an interview with Adele Fornarino and Jake O'Driscoll. Adele is the reigning ADCC double champion after she won the under 55 kilogram division and the absolute division at ADCC 2024. She also won the Who's Number One Strawweight World Championship earlier this year, and Jake is her coach and the head coach at Essence Jiu-Jitsu. Hey guys, I think one of the sort of interesting things to talk about first would be for both of you, obviously, where you're from, Australia. A lot of the sort of like mainstream jiu-jitsu fans may not know much about your background, you know. I think it's something that happens a lot where when people come through in US or Brazil, it's the same sort of training centers that generate the same talent, you know what I mean? Whereas I'm from the UK myself, so we have a similar experience here where people from the mainstream perspective seem to come out of nowhere, you know what I mean? Um, so for you first, Jake, because obviously you've been around a little bit longer, how did you first start in the sport?
Yeah, I'm from Perth, which is the west coast of Australia. Del's from Melbourne, so she's on the east coast, opposite sides of the country. So I started a bit later. I started at 19-ish. I was playing semi-pro football and just started jiu-jitsu in the off season to try and get a little bit fitter and just stuck with it, man. It's been a long. I think it's my 15th year now. It's a long time, getting old. So not too much to my story, man. Del's got a better origin story than I do.
Not really, not even.
So for you then, Adele, obviously you mentioned you started a bit younger then. So how did you sort of start in the sport?
Yeah, so I am from Melbourne, so other side of the of Australia. And when I say other side, it's like actually 4.5 hour flight. So it's like a decent distance away. But I started when I was like 9 or 10 years old, and I started originally because when I was younger, I wanted to be a police officer. So I decided that doing a martial art would help me chase down all the bad guys, and it would make me fitter, faster, stronger, all that kind of stuff. So I just Googled the nearest martial arts center to me, and it happened to be a gym called Dominance, and Dominance happened to be teaching jiu-jitsu. So if there was a taekwondo center closer to me, I probably would have done taekwondo at the time. But yeah, it was just kind of luck at that point.
Cool. And so it's seeing as you two are from opposite sides of the country, and like you said, 4.5 hours is not exactly close. How did you two end up connecting then?
So at the very start of, well, not even at the very start, at the middle of COVID. So COVID hit Australia pretty hard, and a lot of our states got shut down. So we're in lockdown at the time, and during that kind of period in time, I met my partner Nev, and she was going to travel to Perth to study dentistry. So she had a dentistry degree out of a university in Perth. And we kind of were talking back and forth and made the leap to move over there with her, which was, a really scary decision at the time, especially because there was so much like opening and shutting of different borders through Australia because of COVID. So it meant that when I went to Perth, there was no guarantee that I could get back to Melbourne anytime soon, but we just kind of bit the bullet on it, went over there. Ended up living there for 3 years. She finished her degree and is now a fully qualified dentist. I'm still a jiu-jitsu bum. But that's when I met Jake. When I first moved there, I got a message from one of Jake's students and invited me to come train. Just really liked the vibe at the gym. Me and Jake, from like a friendship point of view, like we clicked quite well, but also from a coach and athlete point of view, clicked really well. Like Jake was very in tune with modern jiu-jitsu and leg entanglement and all that kind of stuff, and that was definitely stuff that I wanted to start getting more in depth on and adding to my game. So just the fit was really good, and we just started working together from then.
Nice. And I know obviously for ADCC and for a lot of other events recently, obviously you've had the backing of like ATOS as well. Can you
Yes.
explain a little bit how that relationship sort of works between the three of you kind of thing?
100%. So the original gym I started at was Dominance. Then I lived in Perth for 3 years, so trained at Essence, which is Jake's gym. And then when all the borders started opening back up again, I could travel internationally and started doing majority of my major training camps out of ATOS. So I had gone to the States and not tested out, but like had experienced different gyms, had been in the room with some really high level guys and some really high level coaches and just different environments. And I really clicked with the ATOS environment. I really enjoyed the culture there, really enjoyed training with so many high level females on the mat at ATOS, but also, obviously having Professor Galvao and Angelica there was amazing. Like having that knowledge there was really cool as well. For me, the biggest thing about like training environments in the lead up for competition is culture. And ATOS had a fantastic culture, had a really good environment where I really enjoyed my training, and that was really important to me. So I represent ATOS because I do most of my major training camps out of ATOS. I spend most of my hard time really getting in depth into that preparation at ATOS, and the ATOS team back me. They help me out in any way they can, and that's why I represent ATOS as well.
Cool. No, that makes perfect sense then. I mean, you still live in Australia then, so you're just coming to the US for specific camps before major events then?
Yes, at this time, like I'm still living in Australia, but I spend a decent amount of time in the States. Like throughout the year, I'm back and forth quite a bit.
Yeah, no, it makes sense, especially with like ADCC major events. You want like a big training camp for that, big lead up.
Yeah.
For you two as well, obviously it's got to be quite difficult when you are in camp in Atlas, sort of maintaining that connection. And do you still have like a regular input and everything, Jake, or do you sort of take a bit of a backseat when that happens? Or
No, I run basically everything, man. Like Adele's relationships with her other coaches, she maintains those, and Professor Garval has been amazing in that regard. But I program everything for Dell, everything that she needs to do each day, and we fit it into the structure of what ATOS are doing. I think that's one of the things that Dell's really good at is like getting people around her that support her and support her needs. You know what I mean? And we work really well together. We've had quite a bit of success, so she knows that having me with her is like a good thing. So even when I was there for ADCC camp, I basically didn't train much. I just watched the sessions. But all the guys there, not just Professor Garval, all the other instructors, they were really, really on board with me giving my input and coaching and whatnot. Not just with Adele, even the other athletes as well, which is really nice to see. But at the same time, man, it's one of those things that like we talk about professionalism and we talk about being the best we can be. If Adele is going to be told what she can and can't do by someone, it's probably not the best environment for her. So it's one thing I don't really do with Adele is like, obviously there's some things I'm like, hey, I need you to do this, I need you to do that. But when she takes fights or sponsorships or whatever, it's all on her. Like she'll come to me and say, hey, what do you think about this? And I might give her this answer and she might not like it. And she might go with her original answer. And that's fine. It's her career. Like I've got no issues with that, man. And if there's any other issues with coaches or people around her, Del knows that that's up to her to deal with. Like it's not my problem. I'm here to coach and I'm here to help her get as good as she can be, and everything else is just smoke and mirrors to me, man.
no, that's perfect as well because, like you said, it's great to find two gyms that are or two coaches that are happy to sort of take complementary roles. You know what I mean? And you mentioned obviously having a bit of an input in like other athletes and stuff like that. How did you find your time at Atos, Jake? Like, did you find that you sort of fitted in the same experience with the culture kind of thing?
Yeah, man, it was awesome. Like obviously at first, like I thought like it would be a bit difficult because like, only am I coming in, but I'm coming in as a coach, which kind of puts you in a position where, you can be looked at as like you think you know more than everybody else, which I don't ever advocate for that. I'm more than happy to learn from anybody. But then I was also, like I said, watching most of the sessions, so I couldn't also demonstrate what skill level I had. So there's always that like, is he even any good at what he's doing? But then over time, I really got to train with a lot of people there, got to spend a lot of time with a lot of people there. So we were back there the other day. And it honestly felt like home for me as well. Everyone was they're always super respectful. They're always super nice. Andre has never asked anything of me ever. When we're at WNO, same thing. He was just like, I'm in the corner, but you lead. And I think that's what a really good leader does. You know what I mean? He doesn't have to just stamp me out to show that he's in control. Like it's Atos is his gym, it's his associate, it's his life, and I understand that, and she understands that, and I think we're both very lucky to be involved in, what they're doing and things like that. Adele doesn't represent my gym. She doesn't represent Essence. She never has. She wore a patch at ADCC the last time. But she didn't wear one this time, and I didn't ask her to. It doesn't bother me. The relationship that we have as coach and student goes beyond like what she wears on her clothing. It's just like, yeah, I don't know. I'm not real big into that.
No, that's a good thing. Like I said, you make a good point that like a real leader doesn't stress about being seen as the leader or being seen as the person in charge or whatever. that's not a, to your point, Adele, that's not a good culture. That's not a good environment. Someone's constantly trying to prove that they're the big dog. You know what I mean? It's not something that works, I think, personally. And one thing that is, I think, interesting is obviously the ADCC cycle. The way that works is you've got a sort of 2 year lead into every tournament, and I think it's really nice from a fan's perspective to be able to see like some of the changes that people make. And I think you personally, Adele, you're probably the biggest example of that from ADCC 2024. You know what I mean? The difference that 2 year cycle makes and sort of the changes you can put into place. Can you sort of explain a little bit what happened during that 2 year period? So obviously it's a long time, but yeah, what kind of things were you focusing on during that time?
I just know that there's a very different mindset to the first ADCC compared to the second one. The first ADCC, I was just kind of happy to be there, enjoying, you know, the process. I was just really happy that I won my trials, to be honest. And that was where I saw at that point in time, like that was the pinnacle of my career. And I was really excited to be part of such a momentous event. And, you know, it was the biggest event in jiu-jitsu history at the time, and this ADCC that just passed is now kind of tops that. But the first ADCC, I was happy to be there. The second ADCC, I wanted everything. I wanted every inch. I wanted every match. I wanted every opponent. I wanted every title that I could possibly get. Like, I wanted it, and I was willing to do everything in the lead up to work towards getting it. I did a hard training camp. I stayed focused. I listened to all my coaches. I listened to what Jake had planned through that process. But it was very much like I was leaving no stone left unturned. It was like head down, up, let's get the work done so that we're not leaving anything to chance. And it started directly after the first ADCC. It was like a 2 year build up. Like, we talk about like that there's a 2 year gap, but every decision that we made from that point to the next ADCC was based on trials. It was based on like making sure, obviously, running through trials was really important. That was the first hurdle to kind of overcome. But everything was in the lead up to having a good performance at ADCC. Every decision we made was about ADCC.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of reflected in your career as well, because that's one thing that I noticed personally is during that 2 year period, you didn't do a whole lot of D tournaments. Obviously, prior to that, you seemed like you were doing sort of 50-50 or doing the Mazin one kind of thing. Whereas, yeah, that's clearly not been a focus in the last 2 years. Was that a conscious decision as well to really sort of hone in on Nogi?
Yeah, I wanted to give ADCC everything. I wanted to stay a little bit active. So my rookie year as a black belt, I still did some gi competitions, mostly because I won brown belt world, so I didn't need to qualify for any of those competitions points wise. So I didn't need to do a lot of gi stuff to actually be able to do gi worlds or gi majors. But the main focus was still no gi. I didn't do a significant amount of gi training in the lead up for any of those competitions. Realistically, it was doing them to have exposure to the higher level girls that were in those divisions. So even though it was gi, it was still like doing the process of feeling out those girls, feeling out like the technical levels that there are in the black belt scene, as well as like dealing with some of the pressure. Obviously, like you get into the black belt scene and there's a few more cameras on your mat and a few more people that are watching and the crowd's a little bit louder. So just getting used to that as well was really important.
Yeah, and is that something that you're planning to revisit now? Obviously, you've literally accomplished everything you possibly could at ADCC. I've got no doubt you'll want to come back again, but there isn't any way to top that, is there?
She's got more to do.
Oh yeah,
I got well more to do. This is a start.
She's got no Superfight titles.
true. That's a very good point, actually. Yeah, that's something I didn't even consider. Obviously, with the women's absolute, that is pretty much got a lock there for 2026. Is that something you've had many discussions about with the guys at ADCC or?
At this stage, we have talked about there's interest in it, but it's going to be about finding out how to do it because it hasn't been an absolute. Well, there was an absolute in 2007.
Yeah, I think it's 2007 and 2005.
Yeah, there was one a long time ago, but there hasn't been a female absolute since then. So it's going to be about finding an appropriate opponent for that super fight spot. But it's definitely something we're interested in. I definitely want to do my division again. I want to stay active in ADCC. But to answer your question before, I do want to get back into the gi as well. I have every intention of doing some gi majors next year. I definitely want to do gi worlds as well.
Awesome. And yeah, I mean, next year is that year off where obviously you haven't got to focus on ADCC as much, obviously, as the following year when it's back in full swing. For you as well, is there anyone in particular that you would want to face if they do book that super fight there for 2026? Is there anyone that jumps out for you personally?
For the ADCC Superfight spot?
Yeah.
That's tough. It's 2 years away, man. It's a long time away. It's a long time for the female divisions to change and switch, and for people to make statements, and for people to show what they're made of in the next couple of years. I don't think that there's any standout person in my opinion that couldn't switch overnight. So we'll just have to wait and see what happens when the next ADCC rolls around.
Yeah. No, you are right as well. There is a long time, I think. Even literally this week now, obviously you've got Nogi Worlds coming up, and that's a big opportunity for everyone to make their name. I know obviously you're not competing at Nogi Worlds, are you?
I'm not competing at Nogi Worlds this year. No, I'm not.
But you are, Andy Jake. You're doing Masters one, I think.
No, I was gonna. I'm not anymore. I got offered an opportunity last week. That's a lot bigger for me and just makes a lot more sense. Then it's pretty close to Nogi World, so we just decided that I'll just sit out and coach, and I'll focus on that for early next year. So no, I won't be competing, just coaching.
Can I ask, can you say any more about the opportunity itself, or is it still a bit tentative?
It's still a little bit, yeah, they haven't announced it yet. So, but for me, it's a big opportunity. You know, another country visited against a top 10 ranked opponent, and a match I think I can win. You know, sometimes you get these matches and you're there as cannon fodder, but we really think that I like this one. I can win. You know, but then I am fighting Lucas Kaynard in February as well. So, there'll be two back-to-back ADCC CJI veterans, back-to-back, two completely different weight classes in two completely different countries. So it's going to be an exciting little first couple months.
I like how you're dropping a couple of hints, but you're not quite able to go to say exactly.
You're gonna have to wait and see. You're gonna have to follow them and check out.
Yeah.
But the announcement will come.
Nice. And the Lucas Kaynard match, then, is that back home in Australia as well?
Yeah, that'll be on M16. They haven't announced that just yet, but I'm sure like Miles and Adam are pretty good with, we both agreed and signed off on it. So I don't see any issues on either side. M16 run a great promotion. Adele's a former champion. I'm a former champion. They have like such a high quality for their athletes. They just lack the promotional side with the money, like they're not as bells and whistles as everybody else, but I kind of like it. Like I like it like that. And they treat us really well. So that's a really cool match, man. And like Lucas is obviously, we've known about Lucas for a long, long time. The world just found out about him. But man, I'm at a stage in my career. I just want challenges. I just want to have a bit of fun in terms of like versing the best guys. And yeah, so for me, it just makes sense, over like a Nogi Worlds where like it's not going to change my life, where others for sure, we're talking about this today. There's some athletes I was with today and some of my athletes that I'm coaching this week, it's major for them, For me, like it's not going to change much, man.
I think you're right as well that a match against Kaynard is something that's a pretty big opportunity as well, because he's really, like you said, he's really sort of exploded, obviously, with the win over Victor Hugo at CJI. Is that, can I ask, this might sound like a strange question, but I think it's something that, like I mentioned earlier, you guys sort of benefit from it, where you're from a smaller like jiu-jitsu community. You do sort of see these people like Lucas Kaynard rising up, and you sort of know that they're going to do something big in the next few years, Were you at all surprised at his performance at CJI?
No, not Lucas. There's sometimes a couple that'll break out that they might overnight. Not Lucas. Lucas has kind of been the boogeyman. He hasn't been able to compete a lot over the last few years, but he's the kind of guy that everyone has it where like they train with him and they're like, that's the guy, like he's crazy, so Lucas we definitely knew about, man. Levi is obviously another one that everybody knew about. Dell is another one. You know, there's a few others. There's some. I mean, Australia has a lot of talent, man. A lot of talent. The issue is like getting to the States or the UK because of the money. You know, like it's very difficult. But once people get their opportunities, man, you usually see them consistently stay at that level. You know, so Kaya Rudolph is another one, man. Like Kaya, you know, some people know about him, some people don't, but that kid's ridiculously good as well. You know, and he just did really well on Aiga on the weekend, and I'm sure that when he gets his black belt, he'll get a lot more higher opportunities, and he'll really show how good he is. You know, there's a lot of them, man. They're everywhere.
Yeah, you are exactly right as well. That I think for me personally, because I watch quite a lot of events, I'm aware of. I think I mentioned it to you before when we spoke. I'm aware of like battleground grappling and subversion and stuff like that. So I've seen quite a few like good Australian competitors that are maybe not even fighting in like the main events and stuff, like where you might have Declan Needy and anything like that. But the guys fighting on like the main card, like 2 or 3 fights down, and you watch them and you know it's the same sort of like caliber of competitor that you would see on American events. It's really no different. It's just that, like you said, the promotion isn't quite there, is it? You know?
No. Yeah, so that's the hardest bit, man, is just getting them over and across. But once they do come across, they're usually a pretty big force.
Nice. And can I ask as well, Adele? So you sort of touched on it briefly, that switch from 2022 to 2024 at ADCC. Your first appearance, obviously, you came up against Ffion in the first round, and were you at all not bothered? But were you at all like annoyed that she wasn't actually in the bracket again this year? Or
Like I was in two minds about it, where obviously some of the statements that she's making about increasing women's pay is fantastic, and like to that side of things, it's great to get more attention from as a female athlete, more money as a female athlete, all those things. I was disappointed that I didn't get a chance to have a match with her. I didn't get my rematch that I was really looking forward to, and I, you know, especially in the 55 division, she was supposed to be in that division. That's a good weight for me. The 60-kilo division was a little bit heavy for me when we first fought. But I think the time will come. Like I think it's just a matter of time at this stage, and I think it's a lot to do with picking a good fight promotion that is willing to pay us what we're worth, and willing to put eyes on this match, because it's the biggest female match in jiu-jitsu history at this stage.
yeah, I completely agree. To be honest with you, I don't think there's two women, sorry, that people want to see more right now than you and Ffion, really. Um, and I wanted to ask about the specific matches you did have ADCC 2024. There was two I think that stood out for different reasons for me. You had the opening round match against Mayssa in your weight class. Can I ask, because I think from my perspective, obviously I'm not a top competitor by any stretch of the imagination, but any competitions I have done, when you see someone and you know that they're really good, sometimes that can sort of change your approach to the match sometimes. I think the way that you go into it, was that something that you found yourself? Because obviously she is a top competitor. She is one of the best, you know. Was it something that you sort of planned for her specifically, or did you just go out and do exactly what you knew you were going to do, no matter who it was?
Well, I think that's the thing with ADCC is everybody's really good at ADCC. You can't be not good, and especially in the females, there's 8. There's only 8 in the division, and the best 8 in the world. So there's no easy matches through ADCC. We had, you know, and Jake will talk on this as well, that we had very well thought, planned out strategies. We made sure that we were aware of every competitor in that division, so it didn't matter how the bracket worked out. We were safe, felt comfortable, and felt like we had, you know, dotted the I's across the T's. You know, my game is my game. Like we didn't drastically change anything, but it was just about being aware of certain things. You know, Mayssa is very good at points, very hard to submit. So we knew that was going to be something that was really important to be aware of in the match. But we took it match by match. Like we made sure that everything was planned, but we were only just paying attention to the match that was ahead of us at that given time.
And you mentioned obviously Jake might have a better input or a sort of wider input in this. So when you
she wouldn't know at all. She's like a robot. It's like, hey, do this, and she does it amazingly. I love when they ask that question because she knows too. Look.
She's like, what's the game plan? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, she don't know.
So in that case, then, was that something that you planned out specifically then? And when you saw there was Mayssa as the first match, did you have any sort of specific things in mind that you could take to her to help win that?
Yeah, so like Adele's wanted the match with Mayssa for a long time. You know, definitely no gi. They fought in the gi a couple of times, and I didn't have any input with Del on that. Like Del did those, and she did brilliantly in those matches too. You know, not really training in the gi, but she wanted that match for a long time. So I studied Mayssa for a very long time. I wasn't stoked when we got her in the first round. I pretended to be because Adele really feeds off my energy. So I had to really pretend that this was great for us, and it really wasn't. No, I definitely had a lot of specifics for Mayssa, and it's a lot of tendencies she has, and a lot of things that we could have exploited. And to be fair, like I think it worked out perfectly. We actually got screwed on the points a little bit, which would have changed the match dramatically. But you know, I think that's what preparation does. You know, like Adele didn't get frustrated, she didn't panic, she didn't sook about it. She just trusted what I was saying and jumped back into the focus of the match. And then the overtime is probably the main period where we really focused on a specific strategy, and we were able to implement that really well and frustrate her, you know, and get the win, you know. And I think that once Del got that win, she started to believe what like I believed in her, you know, but I think it's difficult until you do it. So like, I think that was a real benefit for us. I think if she had had one of the lower seeds or one of the girls, like she knew she could beat pretty comfortably, and then we had Mayssa, maybe she would have doubted a little bit more. But the fact that we took her out early, I think it just made her confidence grow for the rest of the competition. And then also from a coaching point of view, like it's very easy for me to tell Adele what to do and Adele to be like, yep, let's do that. But for it to actually work at the highest level, then you get that next layer of trust, because it's like, oh, actually, he does know what he's talking about, you know what I mean? And that's no fault of hers, but you really need to see it or feel it before you can really believe it. So then, you know, as it went on and on and on, it's like, okay, like this really does work. And then we were able to showcase that through the rest of the tournament.
I think you're exactly right as well, that even though it may not have been great when you first see that you're facing Mayssa in the opening round, it definitely did work out that way, where I think that was the toughest match you had in your bracket, really, in terms of the actual what happened on the mat. You know what I mean? That was the toughest one, and then you really seemed to get better as the went into the second day. Then, is that something you felt yourself as well? That your sort of skill, not skill, but your ability did sort of start to shine a bit more as you got more into the tournament past day one.
Going into that, I knew that Mayssa was going to be one of the toughest matches. I think stylistically it was going to be a really tough match. It always was. So definitely kind of overcoming that hurdle gave me a lot of momentum, a lot of self-confidence to go into those next matches, like really backing my own technique and backing the strategies that we'd been working on, and the coach-athlete relationship to that regard. But yeah, I felt very confident that we had done the work to then show the jiu-jitsu.
Yeah. And the other match that I really wanted to talk about, because it's kind of a completely different element of difficulty, I think, is that in your first match in the absolute, obviously you had Brianna, and I know that you two.
She's upstairs. She's upstairs. Hey, Bree, we're about to talk about how Adele bashed you at ADCC. Okay. We're about to talk about how Adele bashed you at ADCC. Yeah.
You want to come down and say hi? You want to come down and say hi? Oh my God, stairs for you too. Okay, I'll say hi if Jake agrees that he's not mad at us anymore.
I wasn't mad to begin with.
You were a little grumpy.
Do you want to ask about how her first match went at ADCC?
I smashed it. Okay? I got to my favorite offensive position, the bottom arm bar. Right? That's where I really thrive. Yeah.
Well, funnily enough, that's literally exactly what I wanted to ask. Is that I know you and Brianna have a really good relationship with each other. Just I think it's kind of like obvious for anyone that follows either you on social media, really. So how was that leading into it, knowing that you were going to have to face her in the opening rounds? I think that is hard competing against not just a person you train with, but a friend, you know?
So I already found out. I want to say like 10 minutes before we were supposed to go. I didn't have that much time between finding out that we were going to fight. And as soon as I was one of the first people to see what the bracket looked like, because they showed me. So essentially, I finished my match in the 55 division, the finals, finished that, and Mo was sitting there with a clipboard. And as I was walking off, he's like, "Are you doing this or not? Like, are you doing the absolute?" And I kind of looked at Jake, and I looked at Andre, and I looked at my partner Nev, and just we were kind of umming and I was like, "Well, I'm not injured," and they were kind of like, "You like do it?" Like they were encouraging me to do it. I'm like, I got nothing to lose. Let's do it. He put my name down, and then.
Start swearing.
Oh,
Did you just pick that up?
yeah, sorry.
Your mum's gonna tell you off.
My mum is gonna tell me off. I got a potty mouth. It's terrible. And then a few minutes later, we get the bracket, and one of the people that was working at ADCC showed me the bracket, and my instant reaction was, "Who else has seen this? Can we change it?" To which she said, "Absolutely not. Mo's written this bracket." I was like, "Okay, well, let me come with you to because I know that she was going to show the rest of the girls in the division, and she was going to show Bree, and I wanted to be there when Bree found out, and I wanted to just kind of be like, hey, we're cool, let's go out there and do our job." And that's what we did. At the end of the day, we go out there and we do our job. We both love jiu-jitsu, we both love competing, we both respect each other as athletes and what we want to achieve as athletes. So we went out there and we did our job, and I'm happy for all the things that Bree has achieved, and Bree was happy for all the things that I achieved. So I think it's just about, giving your best on the day and being okay with the results. For me, it's easier to say it from my side of things, obviously, because I got the win, but you can see, we're still best mates. I was there cornering her at the Crown as well. So we still work together, train together, hang out, stay together, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I think it's difficult, but yeah, like you said, I think that's the best way to look at it, is that it's your job at the end of the day. You know what I mean? There's no hard feelings. It's something you both have to do, and I think it's kind of inevitable as well that you're going to compete at some point. It's whether or not you want it to be right there at ADCC, it's going to happen sooner or later, you know?
Yeah, 100%. It just, at the end of the day, you just got to go out there and give it your best, because I respect Brie as an athlete. She respects me as an athlete. So we got to go out there and put on a performance for everybody that's paid to be there to see the event. And that's what we did.
Yeah, definitely. And I think one thing that was good from my perspective, like I say, watching the event live and seeing it unfold, is you literally rode that, like I said, that wave of momentum from day one into day two. And then I felt like the exact same thing happened where you won the 55 kilo division, and then straight off the bat in the absolute, you were sort of like not better, but like hitting a higher level of like performance, like you were coming out faster and harder, and everything seemed like I said, to build like that momentum, you know?
Yeah.
Was that like an unconscious thing, or was that something that you actually felt as you were going into it, like that you might win this kind of thing?
So going into the 55 division, I felt like super confident, because I knew, like, I had done absolutely everything in the training room that I possibly could have done. I'd lifted as much as I could have lifted. I'd eaten the proper things. Like there was no part of the kind of holistic style of being an athlete that we didn't do to its complete, like, highest level that we could have done it. We optimized on everything. So I felt really good going into the 55, and then my attitude going into the absolute was like, why not? I have nothing to lose. Again, we went back into that same cycle of taking it match by match, making sure that we were staying focused, making sure that we were aware of how this is now going to change with there obviously being some size difference. So we're going in there with good strategies. We're having good chats beforehand to make sure that all the things that needs to be addressed before the match were being addressed. I definitely felt an increase in momentum, but it was every time I won a match in the absolute, it was kind of like, oh, like I'm actually like, we're getting further. Like this is great. I definitely had those moments in the back, like before they announced us out, of like, what am I doing here? I'm kind of looking these plus 65 girls up and down, being like, dang, they're like twice my size. Like why did I sign up for this? Like, hopefully I walk out of here unscathed. Even my mum in the changing rooms, like after I walked into the changing rooms after winning the 55, I'm like, okay, I'm going to do the open. And my mum's like, just don't get injured. That was her advice. She's like, please just don't get injured. Like, she didn't care about the results. She's like, just don't hurt yourself. I was like, thanks, mum.
I think that's something that does play on the minds of like smaller competitors as well, though, when they do the absolute, that's in a nutshell, that's why you don't see many do it. Um, for you though, did you actually, when you actually hit the mat, did you feel that size difference really did make a difference though?
Um, I had to be aware of like distance management, making sure I wasn't getting crushed and that they weren't using it against me, that size difference. But to be fair, like the actual jiu-jitsu felt more or less the same. Like I like to think I'm a technical grappler and I use that to my advantage with there being any kind of size difference. I grew up being the smallest person in the training rooms, rolling with people who I didn't really care what size they were. So it wasn't something that was kind of out of my repertoire or something that I'd never trained before. Yeah, I think it was just I used my jiu-jitsu, I used technical jiu-jitsu as much as I could in those matches.
Yeah, it shows, it really does, because like I said, you picked up the win after win after win, and then finished under the weekend on a massive high note. Is there anything that you mentioned obviously the Superfight at ADCC 2026 now, but is there any other kind of like grand goals that you're looking for over the next few years now? Because obviously you've got quite a long career ahead of you, you know what I mean? You've got plenty of time. So is there anything else you've sort of got like on your wish list? You know what I mean?
Man, I feel like I'm just at the beginning, like multiple ADCC titles are definitely on that list. Like multiple. Jake said he's only going to stick around for 5. That's it.
5 total.
No, you said 5 ADCC titles.
I'm too old for that.
Is it Kobe's number?
Yeah, but I got you 4 this year. One more and I'm out. I'm out.
But no, I definitely have heaps. Like there's a lot of big fight promotions that are getting bigger that are definitely looking after their athletes and putting on massive shows. So being a part of those fight promotions would be really cool. I want to stay active. Like I want to be an active competitor. I have no intention of taking my foot off the gas now. I have a target on my back and I'm going to stay as far ahead of all the other girls in my division as I possibly can. This is not when we slow down. This is when we speed up even more and increase that gap. So I want to stay active. I want to continue building my skills, continue racking up as many titles as I can, make 2025 even better than 2024,
Yeah, it's definitely doable because I mean, like you said, there's so many different promotions out there now. Obviously, the most recent one for you even after ADCC was the WNO title.
Yes.
Could you speak a little bit about that? Like, how was that preparing for? I know you had to change your opponent on, I think, like a week's notice, was it?
We had 9 days to change we had 9 days to, like, I was told that Alex had an injury and she wouldn't be able to compete. And then about a day later, Sophia Casella stepped in. It was around about that. But no, for that, again, like we went into the training camp being like making sure that I was going into that match very well rounded. Every kind of part of my game was feeling very strong. So it didn't really matter who they were putting in front of me. I felt ready to go. It did not matter about a change of opponent. Obviously me and Jake touched base and talked about what that meant from a strategic point of view, but I had the skills to be able to make that adjustment because we had a really good training camp in the lead up. We were obviously coming off the back end of ADCC. That was a fantastic training camp. So we're skill developing through all of that. But no, it's a title that I've definitely wanted for quite a long time. I'm looking at that 125 title and that's looking pretty nice as well. Being a dual champ would be pretty cool.
Yeah, that's definitely a good goal as well because, like you said, you've done 60 kilos before. So, I mean, there's not a huge difference in weight classes that you aren't used to. You know what I mean?
It just means I get to eat more donuts. It's fine.
And can I ask as well, because you mentioned it and that you're not sticking around after 5 titles. Is there any reason for that? Is there any you got like an exit plan?
Yeah, I'm just gonna ride in the sunset, bro. No one's gonna leave. No, I mean, like Adele's got like a long career, man, and she's got so much. She wants to do so many things, and she's got such a bright future. I'm a bit older than her. I've got different things. I've got my daughter. I've got a gym. I'm opening another gym. I've got, I still actively compete. Like this match that I'm taking is a hard match. It's not just sitting back and whatnot. I don't know, man. Like, it's something we have to discuss. You know, I joke about it as well, but like, it's one thing we'd have to discuss anyway. You know what that looks like, because the amount of, and Adele knows this, I don't have to reiterate it to her, but the amount of time and effort I put into her and her preparation and not just the physical work of the study and stuff like that, but it's the mental work to make sure that I'm on point. You know, we talk about her being a professional, but I believe I'm a professional coach, you know, so she understands that when I give her something or I'm doing something, it comes from a base of research, you know, not just, I woke up and decided to do something. But again, it's like that now. Even like this morning, Bree was talking about me being mad at them because we left 15 minutes later than I wanted to. And like, Adele knows this. She's out of camp, but she knows, like, in camp, I don't stand for that stuff. You know what I mean? And it's a lot, man. It's a lot to process all the time. But also, like, Adele is her own person. You know, she needs to be able to, she's a people pleaser. So she's probably never going to get rid of me unless I did something wrong. So I basically need to get rid of myself, you know, because I might not always be the best person to help her. And I understand that. And that can be very detrimental to someone's career. When someone is half in, half out, it's not fair on her. You know, I'm either all in or I'm not. So it's just a discussion we need to have when the time comes, man. And again, we're friends, you know, so it'll be a business thing. And then our friendship will sustain, you know. And then again, if she starts winning more without me, I'll be the first one clapping, you know, I'll be the first one celebrating. And she knows that. Like, it's not a thing where I'm going to be jealous of her success. You know, I'm more than happy to say all the time that it's always her. I try and push it onto her as much as possible.
I think as well that's a really good link back to what we mentioned earlier about like a true leader, a true coach sort of thing. I think what you mentioned is a really, really good point, that you do have to, I think, recognize when, like you said, you may not be the best person right now. Maybe you're the best person tomorrow, maybe you're the best person previously, whatever. But yeah, when that time comes, I think it is important to recognize that from both sides. You know what I mean?
It's difficult sometimes, man, because like, we have such a good relationship. We both struggle sometimes, I think, with other people not understanding what we do. You know what I mean? Like, even in the training room, it's like, you know, sometimes it's hard. Like, people won't listen, and it's like, but the base of evidence is there. You know what I mean? Like, we broke down her WNO win the next day, and she was asking me questions about what she could have done better and the decisions she made, and that's the kind of athlete she is. But then I'll have other athletes that I'll be like, hey, you should look at doing this, and they'll be like, nah. You know what I mean? Or she'll have training partners that'll be like, I want to win worlds. And then Adele will be like, oh, let's go and train. And they'll be like, oh, I'm actually going to the beach. And it's like, you guys don't understand what it takes to be great. You don't. You know what I mean? So that's what I'm talking about when I mean, like, it's a lot. We literally don't switch off. And it's difficult because most people do, you know, and we don't. So like, it can be a lot for both of us. You know, I think we get along really well, but like, everybody else around us can find it difficult sometimes because we're always locked in, you know. So when you ask her, like, what does she want to achieve, she's being modest, but the list that she has is like, it's laughable, but it's also doable, which is what's crazy about it. You know what I mean? And she can do it if she really keeps doing what she's doing.
I think that's great as well, because you've hit on a really sort of important thing that I think is really unique to jiu-jitsu, where we're still a sport where even at the highest level, some people aren't actually professional athletes as such, like the way they treat the sport. And I think that's something that kind of gets glossed over a little bit, because the ones that do stand out, like yourself, like well, I pick anyone that wins ADCC really. Most of them are treating it like a full-time professional job.
Even some of those guys though, man, like, and this is not like a knock on them, but sometimes they don't act like professionals either. You know what I mean? A professional for me isn't like, let's do a 10-week camp and then compete, and because you're good at jiu-jitsu you win. A professional for me is like year round. When does LeBron stop being a professional? When does Leo Messi stop being a professional? Oh, because they make more money. So what? That, like, you're in a professional sport. So we actually had this conversation last night with Dante Leon, and he's one of the first people I've come across who's very similar to our mindset. You know what I mean? And he was saying the exact same stuff we were saying. You know what I mean? Like
Mm.
people in this sport like to fake it, and they'll get mad at me for saying that, and they'll be like, "Oh, well, you've never won anything," and I'm like, "Yeah, cool, man. I'm happy with myself. I'm good." But it's true. Like they do this all the time. Like I said, she's trained every day since WNO, and not train because she has to, train because she wants to get better. And there's a massive difference. Like it's huge. And then people complain about like, oh, you know, she's doing this or she's getting that or she's doing this. Yeah, because she works for it all the time. You know, and then you look at Dante. What hasn't that guy done? You know what I mean? He's competed at the highest level of the sport consistently for years and years. And some of the best guys in the world. Why? Because he's a professional and this is his job.
Kynan's another good example.
Kynan's perfect. Yeah.
I've been in the room with Kynan through ADCC.
Yep.
Because we had the, like ATOS had a separate little warm-up area, like being in the room with him. He's a professional.
Yep.
He was a professional like through his entire training camp. We lifted at the same place. He was professional through his lifting program. He was professional when he was at home and his nutrition. He was professional on the day.
Yeah. And then people go, oh yeah, but he's just strong or he's just big. And it's like, sick, man. That's your excuse for why you can't do it. You know what I mean? She's not big, you know, she's not on the gear, you know, so how did she do it? You know what I mean? There's people, one thing that we do very well, and I'm on her about this a lot, and this is where sometimes we get friction, but then it goes away, is there's no excuses. You know what I mean? Like if she's late, oh, but I was doing this or that. No, you're late. Like there's no excuse for that. Obviously a family emergency or like, I'm not evil, you know what I mean? But like, you know, if you're just around, then no, that's it. Like there's no excuse. You know what I mean? So like we don't do that. So when she signed up for the absolute, we had a no excuse policy. It wasn't, oh, these girls are bigger or these girls are stronger or what. You signed up. So you're going to do the work to the best of your ability. Now the result went our way, but I would have been proud of her regardless. You know what I mean? But we do this stuff all the time. And she's spoken about this on a podcast before. We had an incident at Pampax a couple of weeks ago where she was doing some stuff that I wasn't happy with, and we spoke about it. And then when she committed, she destroyed it. But it's a building process. You know what I mean? She doesn't have to be perfect today. Yeah, she's going to build to that. She doesn't have to be the GOAT today, because when she finishes, that's when the people are going to be like, okay, she was the best. She was the best ever.
Yeah, but that's the professionalism that we're talking about. You can only be a professional coach if I'm a professional athlete. If I'm around, how is he supposed to be motivated? How is he supposed to, you know, do all the research, do all the stuff? If I'm not listening and I'm not doing my part of that, it only works because we're both put in.
You literally hit the nail on the head, I think. And like I said, it is a big thing that I think a lot of people don't realize, because the real standout athletes, you know, you might, like, I don't know, film a video and show people a like the day or whatever. It's the kind of thing that people do quite often, and they go, wow, they're training like 3 times a day. But that may not necessarily be how the year looks. You know what I mean?
You put anything on social media. You could put whatever you want on social media. You could put, I train from, you know, this time to this time. That doesn't make it true. It also doesn't mean that you did hard training or did good training.
Yeah, we put no stock in social media, man. Like we put no stock in what people are doing or how they're preparing or what they're saying or whatever, man. Like you can tell, you know, you can tell when someone rocks up. Like when, you know, Sophia, was a great example. Like she stepped up. I think it's amazing she stepped up. You know, a lot of girls said no. You know what I mean? A lot of girls will say no. Sophia didn't. But you could tell the difference in the body language when they were around each other. You know, there was a difference, you know, and that's not a knock on Sophia at all. Sophia could turn around, you know, in 2 years and win ADCC. Who knows? You know, we were in that spot 2 years ago. People didn't look at her twice 2 years ago, but we did. You know, we believed. But you know, you can tell the difference when someone is on that level and wants to be on that level consistently, you know. And again, we use Kynan as an example. Kynan walked around WNO like it was his building, like he was in his house, and everybody else was just a guest.
That is a really good way to sort of like cap things off as well. I think that is pretty much everything I wanted to sort of ask you and go through. But there is one thing that sticks out from you, Adele, which you're going to have to explain, which is on your hat at the moment.
Is she's gay? Is that what it is?
And that takes much explanation.
No, I mean more like, where did that come from? Obviously, you've I feel like you really sort of like leaned into that nickname over the last like what year or so now. So yeah, where did it come from?
So it originally came from a training partner back at home. You may know her. Her name is Alanis. Fantastic jiu-jitsu, just for record. Side note, she's absolutely amazing at jiu-jitsu. Very, very fantastic. But I was getting ready for ADCC and no, I was getting ready for WNO. This is when I stepped in for Ffion with the tubby match. That was my first WNO performance. And as soon as we got the notice for that, we were locked in. Like we were already in training camp for a grapple fest match, but this one then got kind of slipped in just before the grapple fest match. And I was locked in for that match. I wanted to have a really good performance. And I was kind of walking around the training mats that same mentality that you were just talking about with Kynan, which is like I felt like I owned the building. Like I was in somebody else's gym, but nah, that building was mine. Those mats are mine. This training time was mine. Like that, like alpha kind of mentality of this is mine. I've earned it. I deserve it. And that's that daddy mentality. And then Alanis mentioned, she's like, you got this like daddy kind of vibe about you. I'm like, that's like, I made me laugh at the time. I was like, oh, that's kind of funny. I like it. And then she's like, no, like you got this like daddy mentality, you got this daddy persona about you, and then it just kind of stuck. And then we were just chatting about how we can make the WNO press conference a little bit more interesting. And she's like, oh, get something written on your nails. And we're like, oh, what do I get written? She's like, get daddy written on your nails. And I'm like, oh, that'd be hilarious. And I told my manager about it, Sarah, who is amazing. Like, you know, she keeps me alive, to be honest. She keeps me from, she teaches me how to adult properly, to be honest. But Sarah ended up ordering a hat that said daddy on it. She's like, you got to wear this at the press conference. I'm like, yeah, okay, let's introduce everybody to what daddy mentality is. And that's exactly what we did. And everybody seemed to like it. And everybody is getting around it. So that's that daddy mentality of just like pure ownership of what you're doing and, you know, alpha mentality and that kind of bravado mentality.
That's a good explanation as well. And is it Alana Santiago you talk about?
Yes.
Yeah.
She's
Yeah. So
fantastic. Such an amazing black belt and just an amazing human as well.
yeah, I think she is one of the people that, like I said, if you sort of like pay attention to the Australian scene and stuff, you'll know that she's a really good combatant, a really good grappler. But from people that don't, you literally would never have heard of her before. So I think that's a good example of what I was on earlier as well.
Yeah. If you know, you know.
Yeah. Like I said, that's pretty much everything I really wanted to do with you. But before I let you go, you know, is there anything that you guys want to say or anyone you want to sort of like give thanks to or anything like that?
And man, just thank you for having us on. You know, it's always an honor for us to be able to speak and tell a little bit of our journey and you know what we do. So I appreciate you reaching out to get us on, and thanks for the time, man.
No worries at all. It's been a pleasure, man. Thanks so much for your time, both of you.
Thank you very much for having us, man. Appreciate it a lot.
No worries. Cheers.